tell me about now your grandparents. Do you know anything about your grandparents?
Yeah, both sides.
Okay, tell me about your.
My mother's maiden name was Mangan, M-A-N-G-A-N. So my grandmother was Margaret Mangan. My mother's father died, and my grandmother married a man many years later, companionship.
Yeah.
She married Robert Muses, M-U-S-E-S.
No way.
He was very, 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 I never knew my grandfather. He was a very, very nice man.
Yeah.
They married for companionship, you know.
Yeah. And how many kids did they have?
No, they were married older.
They were married older.
Yeah.
Okay.
My mother came from a family of 5.
5. Okay.
Yeah, 5.
And did they come from Ireland, or were they?
No, just my grandmother came from Ireland.
Okay.
But all her children. My grandfather, my mother's father, came from Boston.
Oh, okay.
But he was born here. My grandmother was born in Ireland.
Okay. Wow.
My father's mother and father were both born in Ireland.
Were they?
Uh-huh.
Now, what part? Do you know?
I'm trying to think when my father's mother was born. I know it, but I really can't think of it now. I just know Ireland. I'm not quite sure of what county it was, but both came over from Ireland.
Wow. Now, were you really close with your grandparents?
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. My mother's mother lived around the corner from us.
Okay.
And I was the oldest grandchild, so I think I was a bit of a favorite to her. There were quite a few followed, but I was still the oldest. And I was the oldest of on my father's
Is that
mother's
right?
side, yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
First grandchild on both sides.
So you're the favorite.
Oh, ho, ho, ho.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. What about your mother and father? Tell me about them.
Both of them were born in the United States.
Okay.
My father grew up in Hell's Kitchen.
Oh, yeah.
In Manhattan.
Yeah.
My mother lived in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know.
Now your father, what did he do? What was his?
Well, when my mother married him, he was an engineer on the Long Island Railroad.
Is that right?
And the 8th Avenue subway hadn't opened up yet. So he took the test, passed the test, and when the 8th Avenue subway opened up, he was one of the first motormen on it.
Is that right?
Yeah. And he stayed there until he retired.
Wow.
Yeah.
And where did you grow up?
Brooklyn.
You grew up in Brooklyn?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Uh-huh. And we did live in Ozone Park for a short time.
Yeah.
But most of I went to school, grammar school in Brooklyn, high school in Brooklyn.
Now, what was it like growing up in Brooklyn?
Very nice. You know, I really lived in Brooklyn until I was, for a short time, my parents lived in Ozone Park.
Okay.
In fact, that's where I went to grammar school in Ozone Park.
Ozone Park?
Yeah, St. Elizabeth's. And then my parents moved from Ozone Park to Brooklyn. And then I finished grammar school in St. Gregory's there in Brooklyn. I
Okay.
went to high school in Brooklyn.
Wow.
Mm.
That's awesome.
Yeah, married a Queens guy.
Now you have sisters though, right?
Yeah, 2 sisters. Peggy is right after me. She's 2 years younger, and then Carol was the baby.
Yeah.
Not a baby now, though.
No, I tell you.
3 girls.
Did you feel like you had a lot of responsibility being the oldest sister?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
I probably had responsibility, but I don't know how responsible I really was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you were growing up, what was your earliest, like your fondest memory when you were growing up?
I don't know.
Do you have one?
I have very lovely memories. Good memories. And I'm going to tell something now that not the family knows. Only somebody found out 2 weeks ago. God blessed me with a beautiful voice. And my mother made me take singing lessons, and I took singing lessons with this Isabel Leonard of Carnegie Hall, and I sang in Carnegie Hall.
You sang in Carnegie Hall?
I certainly did. And I kept that, and my sister Peggy only made it known about 2 weeks ago, and everybody was shocked. Not one of my kids knew it.
No, I never knew that.
Yeah, see? None of my own knew it.
No.
Yeah, I did. I was blessed, but I hated it. hated it, hated it, hated it. My mother used to send me to the singing lessons, and I had a nice teacher. She was old. Her name was, I told you, Isabel Lemon. And they thought I was going to be an opera. I had a very high opera voice. But
Can you sing us a song right
no,
now?
I lost it just like that. But
Did
I
you?
think I wanted to.
Yeah.
I did not enjoy, no matter who, anybody came to the house, come on, Jean, give us a song.
Oh, yeah.
I took in, when I went to Captain McCauley High School, I was in 2 big plays.
Yeah.
I was in Rio Rita
Yeah.
and the Old Mill.
No
And I
way.
took the lead in both of them because I sang.
Yeah.
But did not like it. Did
No.
not like it. But my mother held things over my head
Yeah.
to keep me going for singing lessons. But if your heart's not in it, you're not going to be a singer.
Yeah.
And then, as I got older, today I could not sing, hold a tune at all. I have no
Oh, yeah.
voice for
Yeah.
singing, I guess it just came as a youngster.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Well,
That's awesome.
see?
What else don't we know? So now tell me about how you met Grandpa. I
Oh.
love that story.
Oh.
Here, let me shut the door just because I like this one.
That's all right.
This was a good one.
Oh. There was a relative in the family, her name was Agnes Gallagher.
Uh-huh.
And apparently, she came out from Ireland with Grandpa, your grandfather's mother. And Grandpa, my husband, was a quiet man, and he was apparently a very good son. And of course, you'd hear about, well, Johnny O'Shea, Johnny O'Shea. And that would be, I guess it was quite a few years ago, when I started to, that was about 17 or 18, because I know I was married, I was exactly 20, so maybe I was 18, because I didn't go with Grandpa long anyway, before I married. But, what can I say? It was, I met him down in Rockaway. I was down there, and I'd heard about him through his mother and a relative of my mother's. So I went down there with some girls, and I had heard about John O'Shea. So at those years, the sergeants dispersed the policemen. So when we got down there near there, he was the sergeant, and he had about 4 or 5 policemen. And of course, it was during the summer, it was Rockaway, it was very, very lively. So I was with other girls, and we kind of stood back, and we watched this young, well, I guess it looked pretty young, I don't know, talk to these young cops, and the next thing, they dispersed. So finally, after they did, I went over, and there was a young cop standing there by himself, and he says, "Officer, the sergeant was just talking to some of you fellows. Which one was John O'Shea?" And he says, "I'm John O'Shea." I nearly died, because in those days, women were not outgoing, and
Yeah.
I really wasn't. So then I was kind of stuttering. I remember that, because the girls were all laughing behind my back, and I said, "Well, the reason I inquired about him, my aunt came from Ireland with his mother." So he said, "Who's your aunt?" I said, "Agnes Gallagher." "Oh, yes, yeah. So we started to talk, and he said to me, we talked for a while, and then he had to go. He said, "Listen, what are you doing tonight?" He said, "Really nothing, I'm with the girls." He said, I get off duty at 4 to 12. Then I was down there with girls staying in a house.
Yeah.
At 4 to 12. He said, "Suppose we go out and have a beer." I said, "Well, all right." That was July, sort of the end of July. And I was married at January. That's how
That
fast
January.
the road, yep. July, August, September, October, November, 6 months is all I knew.
Wow.
And we lived very happy.
Now, was it love at first sight?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. No sex, but
Yeah.
lots of love. My day, that was
Nothing.
out. Oh my God.
Nothing to your honeymoon, or
That's right. Absolutely. That just wasn't in those days.
yeah.
Especially if you brought up Roman Catholic. Holy
Oh.
Mary. She used to say, "Have you in hell?"
Now he was Roman Catholic the whole
Yes,
way?
definitely,
Okay.
definitely. I
Okay.
think the whole time he was married, I don't think he ever missed mass.
Is that right?
Yeah. And yet, he did not go to Catholic school. John went to public schools.
Did he?
Well, there were no Catholic schools near where he was.
Yeah.
And yet, he was a very, very good, not a crazy, a good Catholic, went to mass,
Mhm.
abided by the rules of the church.
Yeah.
Just a good man, but I think that would have been him anyway, whether he was Catholic
Yeah.
or Protestant or anything else. Just a
Definitely.
good man, that's all I can say.
Now, growing up, I could never. Did you guys get into arguments? Is it?
Very little.
Yeah.
I could have been argumentative, but he'd walk away from it. In fact, one time I had to go to the doctor's, and my blood pressure was kind of high, and I must have had to toot to. He says, "Do you and your husband ever fight?" I said, "No, my husband wouldn't fight with me." He says, "Well, I think a good fight would do you good."
Yeah, because you could keep it bottled up, huh?
Yeah, but he would do. John would never gave me any reason to fight. He was a very, very, very easygoing man.
Yeah.
I could count on less than one finger how many fights we had in the time we were married. That's how few.
Is that
He
right?
just wasn't a fighter. He
Yeah.
wouldn't give me anything to fight about. When you were a fighter, I mean, I was mostly with the kids because he always had 2 jobs.
Yeah.
You know, he
Yeah.
had to with all the kids.
Yeah.
And
Was it hard growing up? Like, was it hard raising the 9 kids? Or 10,
I was young
actually?
myself.
Yeah.
I was young myself. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And when he was around, but we needed the money.
Yeah.
And he worked for his cousin, who owned a liquor store in Floral Park.
Is that who it was? I didn't know if that was.
Yeah, Huey and Kay Mulholland. It was John's mother's sister's daughter. They owned this liquor store.
Yeah.
So, and of course, I was glad to have John because he was very honest,
Yeah.
and it was extra money coming in.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, but it wasn't a lot of money.
Yeah.
But in those days, you couldn't do it today,
Yeah.
you know. And he'd always do good around the holidays. He'd make deliveries of liquor for people when they ordered like a case
Oh, yeah.
of booze of some kind, you know.
Yeah.
But he always worked. He always had a job. Another time, now he drove a taxi cab in Manhattan.
Did he really?
Yep.
And a cop? And
He was still on the cops, but to make extra money.
yeah.
And then it was a taxi cab, and then somebody got him a job another time while he was still at the meat market down in Brooklyn.
No way.
Yeah. Well, like
I mean,
said,
I can't believe he worked all those jobs.
yeah, he always worked.
And they worked at the Concorde. He worked at British Airways.
Oh yeah, that was his job after he retired from the
Yeah.